We're going to start out here with something that I have been waiting a very long time to be able to talk about. Something long overdue finally happened this week. But you may not know about it because WWE did it literally in the dead of night without any fanfare. The Vladimir Superfan documentary has finally been uploaded to Peacock and the WWE network internationally after being held in limbo for over 2 years without any explanation whatsoever. And for those who don't know, Vladimir, his full name is Vladimir Abuzid. He has been a fan of pro wrestling and a fan of WWE for decades. And if you ever attended any shows here in New York City, especially at Madison Square Garden, or you watched them on TV, whether it was a house show, a Monday Night Raw, a pay-per-view, it didn't matter. I guarantee you that you have seen Vlad in the crowd at least once. He was unmistakable, usually with the tank top. He was built like a wrestler. He kept himself in great shape. He had the glasses, always with a smile on his face, and almost always in and around the front row. He was one of these fans that you would see and you would think to yourself, how the hell does he always keep getting the same seats? How is it that he is always in the front row? And what does he do for a living that he can afford to always be in those seats? Or does he have some kind of hookup in WWE? Well, the documentary does not answer this question, but we do have an answer now as to how him and all these other guys that you would see in the front row at every show, how they got their seats. So Mike Johnson answered the question on PW Insider. Vlad is one of Mike's best friends. There was no hookup in WWE. There was no secret connection that he had years ago. Vlad and all of those guys, they would line up overnight outside the Madison Square Garden box office. And they would wait for the ticket office to open to buy their seats. And because the staff who worked there, they came to know them after a while, you start seeing the same faces over and over again, the box office set them up and allowed them to buy a block of the same seats every month as part of a subscription. So all they would have to do is just drop by and pick them up, and they basically owned those seats as long as they wanted them. And that's the way it was until they eventually did away with selling subscriptions to people. He says that as far as pay-per-views, it was always a matter of being at the Ticketmaster outlet the day that the show went on sale and just being lucky. And then later on, when WWE would hand out flyers at the events for fans to pre-order tickets, Vlad and them, they would send someone from their group to that show to get the flyer and then immediately leave to go to whatever the main post office was in that city, wherever they would be, and they would overnight mail the ticket order to the arena. So it was there by the next morning. So that's how they did it. You know, they had to put the work in. It wasn't easy, but they put the work in, and you've obviously got to have the money to pay for it. These were not comp tickets, but that's all it was. You know, he was just a super passionate fan of pro wrestling who spent and still spends his money to attend as many shows as he possibly can. And in the movie, he says people for years, they thought that he was Vince McMahon's personal trainer or that he was Vince McMahon's bodyguard and that that's how he got the seats. But no, those were just urban legends. In the documentary, they actually show footage from a house show. It was back in October of 1986. And it was Roddy Piper hosting a live edition of Piper's Pit. And Bobby Heenan tells Piper that, you know, you're not Mr. Popularity. You can't find a tag team partner. And Piper brings a fan up to the ring on the apron. And he asks him, who should I pick as my tag team partner? And the fan says, Hulk Hogan. And the fan was Vladimir. And they have footage of this. They have all kinds of footage of him in this documentary. But he tells him, you know, you should pick Hogan as your partner. And of course, MSG explodes. And that was the main event for the following month at the next Garden show. But he is so recognizable over all these years. Even the wrestlers know who he is. They see him in the crowd. They go up to him. Hey, Vlad, what's going on? You know, it's like he's an unofficial part of the show. And the nicest guy that you'll ever meet. Even though we both live in New York City, we probably went to a lot of the same shows at the Garden. The first time I ever met Vlad was in New Orleans. It was actually on Bourbon Street. When I was there for WrestleMania 30. So it's not just New York City events that you would see him at. In 2019, WWE began filming a documentary on him and his life called Superfan. And then in 2021, obviously COVID hit in 2020. In 2021, they released the trailer for the documentary. I think actually at WrestleMania that year was the first time we saw the trailer. And it was supposed to be released later that summer. For whatever reason, it was never released. But what was frustrating about it is that there was never any explanation given as to why. There was never an update. There was never a new release date given. You know, it'd be one thing to say, hey, we're working on this project and we don't have a lot of details yet. And then, you know, things just sort of fall into a black hole. But when you actually announce it and you put a trailer out, you put a date out for it, and then just radio silence, it's very frustrating. And so they just shelved it. And it was never spoken of again. It's been so long, the person who directed it doesn't even work for WWE anymore. He works for AEW now. But people like Mike Johnson went nuclear on them for it because every time he would ask somebody in the company about it, he would never get a straight answer as to why it wasn't released. It's like the Lex Luger Icons thing. They had the series of Icons episodes on the network about different wrestlers, right? They put a trailer out for the Icons episode on Lex Luger. It was supposed to be released on July 4th. Last year, I think it was. And then, nothing. It got pulled with no explanation whatsoever as to why. Until later on, they basically just rebranded it, or repurposed it, as one of their A&E biography specials, and they dumped it on there. Same thing here. They just dumped it, finally, on the network, and they made no mention of it. It was someone Friday night who was randomly looking for something to watch on there who accidentally stumbled across it and said, hey, the Vladimir thing is up. That's how word began to spread. But it's out now. I watched it. It's an excellent documentary. It's an easy watch. It's not that long. It's only about 37 minutes. And it's more emotional than I was expecting it to be. It made me tear up. I'm not going to lie. You know, Vlad came to Manhattan from Haiti as a child. Bruce Pritchard in the documentary said he always thought Vlad was Russian. And with a name like Vlad, I could see why he would think he was Russian, but he's not. He's actually Haitian. And they had comments from a whole bunch of stars, Hulk Hogan, Shawn Michaels, Jeff Jarrett, who again probably was working for WWE at the time that this was filmed, so they had access to Jeff Jarrett. Sean Waltman has interviewed Drew McIntyre, Kevin Owens, and others. The two things that come across in this documentary are the man's love for his mother and for wrestling. And he was very much looking forward to attending WrestleMania 36 in Tampa until COVID hit. And not only was he not able to attend WrestleMania, his mom had taken a bad fall. She ended up in a nursing home, which was the worst place for her to be when COVID first hit because it was spreading like wildfire through the nursing homes here in New York. And hers, unfortunately, was one of them. And so his mom got COVID and she died. And the pain for him was just unbearable. It was tough to watch him talking about what happened without getting emotional. I mean, how could you not? You know, when you see how close they were and how much she meant to him. He admitted to 3 suicide attempts, one by taking sleeping pills. Thankfully, none of them were successful. He started going to therapy. He's doing better. But again, you can tell he still struggles with what happened. Unfortunately, yeah, it's something that I can relate to, and I don't know, maybe this hit me harder because of that, but I think even just on a human level, if you watch this, it's just a very emotional thing. But then WrestleMania 37 rolled around, and they did go to Tampa, and they did allow, I think it was 25,000 fans into the stadium, and he wasn't going to miss that show for the world. And they showed him hanging out backstage and how excited some of the wrestlers were to see him, and they surprised him by having Triple H and Stephanie present him with the first ever certified WWE Superfan Award, which was a WWE championship, or at least the center plate. I don't know if it was the full belt, but it looked like the center plate in a glass case. It had his name inside. He was blown away by the gesture. They showed him being surprised by Triple H and Stephanie, and it was a very nice moment. It was a very classy move on WWE's part. One of the reasons that Mike Johnson was so upset about them holding back the documentary is because Vlad has had some health issues in recent years, and I think he wasn't sure kind of what was going to be with his friend, and he just really wanted him to see it be released, you know, before it was too late. Yeah, Vlad's over 60 years old now. He doesn't necessarily look it, but he's over 60. And unfortunately, they did not mention this in the documentary, probably because when it was filmed, yeah, I mean, obviously it was before he was diagnosed. Vlad was officially diagnosed. It was either late last year or early this year with Parkinson's disease, which is why in some of the footage you see his legs are a little wonky when he walks. He was in Los Angeles for WrestleMania weekend this year and put off an important surgery that he needed so that he could be there and attend the show. But there were some fans who saw him who thought maybe he was drunk, just the way he was moving around. And so he told Mike, look, you have my permission to let people know I wasn't drunk. It's the effects of the Parkinson's. It makes it a little difficult for him to get around some days. Some days are better than others. But the last time I saw him was actually outside Terminal 5 in Manhattan when House of Glory ran a show there last summer, and he was using a cane to get around. So he had probably had it for years and just did not finally get it diagnosed until pretty recently. But he seems to be doing okay, all things considered. He was forced to retire from his job, but otherwise it sounds like he's doing okay on the whole. MLW also honored him last year at one of their shows with their first King of All Superfans award. I can't think of anybody more deserving if you're going to create an award like that. He has this, you'll see it if you watch the documentary, he has this childlike enthusiasm for wrestling, even at his age. That's just really fun to watch. And I'm happy for him that they finally decided to let the rest of the world watch what really is, I think, one of the better documentaries, short as it is, one of the better documentaries that they've ever done. And it's absolutely worth a watch. And the one person who has no idea that it has been released yet is Vlad himself, because he has no social media. So Johnson says that he plans to go to his apartment as soon as he can to let him know that it's finally out.